Hello, my England curious peeps. This is Kat, aka Kakibot, and today I am saying hello from Manchester. We had to come here to deal with some of the paperwork around our wedding, so soon enough we will be proper legally married at last. But for now we are enjoying 2 full days of basically a vacation. The vibe here is so different. Like, we've been here for 1 night already, and I have to say that my first impression is that the atmosphere is like the opposite from what Edinburgh has to offer. So my thinking is, perhaps if you ever get tired of that like sleepiness, that like comfort that Edinburgh has to offer, then maybe you should hop on a train or in a car and come over to Manchester and see what this wonderful city has to offer. It is so vibrant, there's so much going on. It almost feels like a little London in many ways, because there's a Chinatown, there's like a little good like gay quarter, there are so many museums. There's an Imperial War Museum, there are a lot of galleries, one of which is just behind me and we're planning to go there later today. Well, anyway, I don't have to tell you that right now, because if you stay tuned, you're gonna see all of the great spots that we as first-time visitors are gonna be popping over to. So yeah, please join us and enjoy Manchester with us. We stayed at Whitworth Lock, a super stylish apart hotel whose sister location you might have noticed in Edinburgh too. I just love having the convenience of having a kitchenette. The hotel also has a pretty large cafe downstairs, which is great when you have a kitchenette but weren't bothered to do any shopping. We started exploring by walking towards the northern quarter, the best area for cafe hopping and visiting indie shops. It was obvious to me from the get-go that Manchester is fantastic for any sort of vintage shopping. One of the biggest legends on the scene is Empire Exchange, a veritable Aladdin's cave catering to everyone from music fans to Eddie Murphy memorabilia collectors. If you're more of a creative artsy type, you must pop into Fred Aldes. This art supply store has been around for over 130 years and it's stocked so well that you will be leaving with enough inspiration and paper stock for several art projects. I think one of the first places you should explore the food scene at is Mackie Mayor, a street food market opened in the former Smithfield Market Hall. The whole place is stunning, and I love that the food is delivered to your table after ordering. Before dinner, we still managed to visit Manchester Art Gallery. It had 2 interesting free exhibits on at the time, one about the history of hot drinks and one about dandies throughout history. But my favorite part was probably this painting of Egypt in the permanent exhibit. Final flourish on our agenda was visiting Speak in Code, one of UK's top 10 cocktail bars. The vibe was super friendly and not pretentious at all. Prices pretty on par with Edinburgh, so, you know, not cheap, but worth it. And good morning to you again! We grabbed a tasty brunchy breakfast at Hampton and Vui. I can really recommend this little spot if you want something both tasty and, let's be honest, photogenic. After that, we had to go through 7 gates of hell at my country's consulate, and after that, we treated ourselves to a visit to the People's History Museum. If you're into social justice or want to understand UK's politics better, this is such a wonderful place to start. Pretty close to the museum is the ever so beautimous John Rylands Library, and it is closed on Mondays, so we just went and got the cinnamon instead. So the first day in Manchester is behind us now. We're kind of like midway through our trip. Yesterday we mostly spent our time in the northern quarter, which I have to recommend if you're into like artsy things and artsy shops and artsy cafes. And honestly, I wish I had more time there. Maybe if we have some time today, we will go back and explore more of their delicious treats and artsy bits, but for now we are in the city center. We are right next to the cathedral, and the building behind me is called the Old Wellington. It is a pub, which is, I think, officially the oldest building still standing here in Manchester, but funnily enough it's not actually standing on its original site. They dismantled the whole building and built it again over there. So yeah, pretty cool, but it's really beautiful. The cathedral is also beautiful, and it's right next to the football museum, where we'd like to have a little peek as well, because I feel like Manchester has kind of like 2 big things going on, which is football and the working class, which is the reason why we visited the People's Museum this morning, which is a lot about that, about kind of like the fight for power for the people, which was really fascinating. If you are an angry liberal, then you need to see that museum. It's great. Yeah, so keep watching to see what else we discover today in Manchester. Okay, so the football museum was £11, which we didn't want to pay for football, but it's free to residents, so that's really nice. So we ended up walking back to Northern Quarter instead and visited another legendary spot for weird and wonderful shopping, Affleck's. This is like if a department store went completely unhinged. Every floor just features more and more hidden gems, including a Japanese-style maid cafe. Very late lunch, pies from Pie Minister. This is a top choice if you want to try a traditional English pie, but maybe want a vegan or vegetarian option. I went for the venison and it was top notch. On our last night, we returned to Chinatown and gave it a proper look. I had to visit Ohio, a Manchester-born tea spot featuring Shiba Inu branding, and if you know me, you know I am a sucker for pretty much anything someone has slapped an image of Shiba onto, so yeah, buy me Shiba stuff, thank you. If you're more more into soft serve or cake, Tujiri is the place to go. This is a part of a Kyoto-based chain specializing in matcha treats. Heartbreakingly, no Tujiris in Scotland yet. You could also try one of the many sit-down restaurants in the area and get yourself some crispy duck or even some ever so sweet and aromatic chashu pork over rice. Chinatown is right next to Manchester's gay village, where we shall end our trip. It's the home of many of Europe's best gay bars and venues, and the statue of Alan Turing, who is hanging out in one of the adjacent parks, waiting for you to come and say hi to him. So it's day 3 and we are just about to get in our car and get on our way back home to Edinburgh, which by the way is about 4-hour drive, but realistically more of a 5, and if you make any stops then kind of 6 to 7. On our way back we actually stopped by Lake District. It was my first time ever and it was a great little stop, so I do recommend taking the whole day off for the travel and stopping by Keswick and just kind of like seeing a bit of the lakes and then continuing onwards to Manchester. And you're gonna thank me for this tip, because one thing that I did not like about Manchester is that there's basically no greenery. It is a very like a city. Even when you look at the map, you're gonna notice that there are basically no parks, which is kind of strange because Edinburgh feels like all parks all the time. And Prague also is very park heavy. So that is one thing that really hit me. And when we were trying to like find cool places to shoot little talky bits for this video, that was a bit of a problem. I wonder how the city is in the summer when it gets hot. I imagine that the streets and the buildings really kind of like barf out a lot of heat back at you, because even kind of around the river there isn't really much open space, at least not in the center and kind of like the areas immediately around the center. What the city lacks in greenery, it makes up for in the people, because even though they're kind of grumpy, I think that people in Manchester are really interesting. It hits me as a place that like if you yourself feel like a bit of an oddball, if you moved here or if you studied here, you would definitely find your tribe. I would be really curious to know what you think about Manchester if you've ever visited or if you've lived here. It's just such a different vibe from everything else that I've ever seen in the UK, so I definitely want to come back at some point. Okay, I'm gonna end this video by sharing a little fun fact about Manchester with you, which is that in Roman times, this area was called Mamucium. Mamucium? Let me know in the comments below if you know how to do Latin. Then Victorians thought it was Mancinian in old Roman times, and the men of Manchester just thought like, ooh, like that sounds like the city of men. That's how we understand that word. When in fact it meant a breast-shaped hill. And I like how that just went in the totally opposite direction of where these manly Manchester men thought it should. So, saying goodbye to the city on the breast-shaped hill is me, Kat. Don't forget to visit me on Instagram on kakibot and kakiblog, usually for content about Edinburgh and Scotland, but sometimes also about England. Gasp! If you have any other cities in England that you're super curious about, let us know in the comment section below, and I shall see you soon.